Right, hello everyone. Have we all been having a good day? The last talk of the day, the one you're going to be the most awake for, aren't I lucky? Forgive me if I yawn. We've just had our second adopted child move in this week, and she's 9 months old, and she doesn't understand the whole night into the next morning thing. But I've never been a witness. I've never been a Mormon, never been anything much apart from a sinner like the rest of us ultimately, I guess. But I just wanted to, just before we kind of go on, I'll give you a quick bit of background, because understandably everyone who's got up here today has been a witness, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses Day, and so I think it'd be interesting maybe just for you to see how someone who's never been a witness actually gets into the ministry of reaching out to Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. So just a quick 5 minutes before I go on to the kind of subject matter. I was brought up into a non-Christian household, no particular religious leaning of any kind. I was at college, and there was this girl in the college that I'd heard was a Christian. People thought she was a bit strange, all that type of thing. And she invited me along to this event called the Alpha Course. Have we heard of that? Yeah, great. So that's like a 10-week introduction to Christianity. So she invited me along, and at first I thought, why would I want to go to that? But she wasn't too bad looking. It was free food at a very nice hotel. So I went along and had a look, and I expected, I guess to be fair, has been in many of our guys' experiences, but I expected to be told each week how I needed to perform, how I needed to do this and that, and maybe I would go to heaven. And as you might expect, that's not what I found. Each week there was people getting up telling their stories of how Christ was alive, Christ had changed their life. When they put their faith in him, this is kind of the life change they went through. And that really impacted me. That actually changed right from the beginning my perception of Christianity. And then they got to a week where they talked about sin. And again, it wasn't just you're so bad, but it was actually sin is a pattern in your life that, aside from being in Christ, you're kind of powerless to be free from. And I heard that and I thought, wow, you know, I can look at my life and relate to that. So long story short, I became a Christian. I'm still at college. Now at this point, as a new Christian, I became mega keen, like annoyingly keen. I probably annoy you guys. I was inviting everyone to church, inviting everyone at the Alpha Course, trying to talk to everyone about it. And I got a reputation as being the scary cult boy. And so this is as a Christian as well. I was the scary cult boy. And there was a religious studies class that used to have discussions on me, you know, what's scary cult boy been up to this week? Has he invited you to church? You know, what's he said to you? So anyway, in my second year of college, I joined that religious studies class so that I could kind of speak up for myself. And in that class, there was a Mormon. At that stage, I didn't have much of an idea what that meant. But towards the end of the year, I did an assignment called Describe and Evaluate 2 Christian Cults. And at that stage, I still didn't know what that meant, but a quick Google search showed me that the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons were the 2 biggest groups that fell within that category. So I researched them. I went to watchtower.org and put my details on the website and thought in the process, I'll show them. I've been a Christian 3 months. And I get a knock on the door from the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think this is my chance. And, you know, I start to show them a couple of verses, that type of thing. And they threw me absolutely all over the place. And for weeks, my head was in bits. I went through a genuine stage of thinking, should I be a Jehovah's Witness? Should I be a Mormon? I was serious. And so I went to the Bible, and I didn't just read Jesus loves me, but I looked, who is he? What is salvation all about? Who really is God? Is salvation by faith or works? All that stuff. And I realized that not only should I not become a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, so that's good news, but I realized that actually they needed reaching. And as I spoke to the Christians in my church about this, I realized that not everyone felt that kind of same burden for them straight away. So that told me that it was something unique to me. I spent a year in Manchester on a year team, and I guess long story short, the amount of encounters I had with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, by the end of that year, I knew that was kind of God's call on my life. So for 11 years now, my kind of primary passion, primary ministry has been to reach out to Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. And so, as has been mentioned a couple of times today, that's birthed in the last couple of years this ministry, UK Partnerships for Christ. This day has not been as such an official UK Partnerships for Christ day, it's just that the people running it are a part of it, so that's why it's been mentioned a lot. And this came into being a couple of years ago when I went to Utah. I've been to Utah on 3 outreach trips to Mormons, and on the second one I was staying with the ministry over there, Utah Partnerships for Christ, and that kind of birthed the UK branch of that. And what we do, like quite a lot of the other ministries, is we have websites. We have watchtowerinvestigated.co.uk, upfc.org.uk, and they're kind of seeking to reach out to, we also have mormonisminvestigated.co.uk. But the main thing that we kind of are passionate about that I'm going to get onto in a minute is going around local churches and teaching. But as well as us, we are far from the only ministry in the UK We have first and last ministries, as has been mentioned already, because what I'm trying to do here is just to kind of show you some of the work that's already going on in the UK. Some of us are already aware of these things, some of us are not. So as well as us, we've got Paul and Will Bacon here, who they send literature all around the world. There's these aware leaflets that have been given out and various other things, which really do have quite a lot of good impact on people. We've got Spotlight Ministries, which is led by Vince McCann, as well as his YouTube channel. He has this website, which has got lots of excellent articles on. And I think Vince, like us, is available to speak at places when asked. We've got Reach Out Trust, which obviously, very sadly, we're aware of what happened with Doug Harris. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Reach Out Trust in time to come, whether they've got a replacement or not. But certainly, as it stands, that's one of the other very key ministries in the UK. And obviously, many of us have YouTube channels. That's not an area I've personally got into too much, but I'm aware from the stories today that it's done a lot of people a lot of good. So that's really exciting to see. But what I want to look at is kind of, we've got all these things already going on. But I guess me, I'm not into terms and names, but I do see myself as an evangelist. And I'm kind of always thinking, how can we do more? How is a way that we can kind of impact more Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses than we currently are? And what I mean by that is the ones that aren't just coming across our websites and YouTube channels, and of which is probably a majority if we're honest with ourselves. And so there's two kind of ways that I feel we as a whole can be the most effective in reaching out to Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. One of those is unity. I'm going to explain that. And number two is the Christian church. So by unity, I think today is an absolutely perfect example of that. We're all kind of coming together as Christians with this background, with this passion, with this goal, and saying, look, this is what I went through, this is what I'm maybe going through, that kind of thing. And this is a real chance for people to realise that they're not alone. Because if there's one thing I'm sure the Watchtower kind of would like you to think is that you're really bad, you're the only one or one of the very few that does this. But I think coming to days like this helps you really see that actually that's far from the case, and that this movement deals with everyone who kind of goes out of line in the same way. And I think this sense of unity, I would kind of really, really encourage you to kind of take contact details from each other. I'm not just saying from me, but get to know people. For me, when I've been doing this ministry for 11 years, and for at least the first 5, 6 or 7, I didn't know anyone else that was doing this. I was very much on my own with it. It was kind of quite frustrating, that type of thing. And the more I've got to know other people, I work very closely now with Tony and Jason, the more it kind of helps me realise I'm not on my own, the more I can bounce ideas around, the more people can kind of speak into me, that kind of thing. And that really, really does me good. So I'd encourage the rest of you to kind of keep up the contacts that you make today. One example I saw recently on YouTube that I thought was very good was Jason here with this guy, Andrew Watt from London. Andrew Watt, sorry. Andrew Andre. I saw this YouTube video that I thought was really good of Andrew and Jason kind of speaking to each other, bouncing stuff around from what they'd gone through as Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think that kind of thing is brilliant. If there's one thing I've really got a passion for lately, it's not just to speak up for my ministry, look at me, look at what I do, but actually speak up for other people and point people towards other places, because we're all kind of a body, as it were, with different parts to play. Right. I guess this is the main place I'm going. I'll try and speak a bit slower now. And this is the main way that I genuinely believe and genuinely feel that we can impact the UK to reach out to Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, and that is through the church, through the Christian church. I think quite often people involved with this ministry, or people that have come out of Jehovah's Witnesses who are obviously very theologically minded, it's very easy to be quite critical of the church and be critical of some of the things that we see go on, some of them deservedly so, and we can kind of separate ourselves from it. But I actually think within the Christian church, despite its faults, it's the same church that Jesus died for, the same church that he said he would build, and the gates of hell would not overcome. I actually think is the answer to reaching as many Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses as possible. So what about the church? 1, we are a part of it. 2, the answer to reaching Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses is found in that. And so what I mean by we are a part of it, and there's just some verses here that kind of encourage people to be a part of a church, actually talk about us being members of one another. I think quite often, and you will know this through your own experience, when people leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, quite often the last thing they want to do is join a church, because they've been in a movement that's lied to them for years. Do they then want to go straight onto another one? And quite often people do over time join one. But I've come across people, and I'm sure you guys have over the internet, who end up never joining a Christian church. And I think that's actually for them quite unhealthy, and that in kind of the sense I was on my own with this ministry stuff. Imagine if you were completely on your own with your Christian life. Imagine if the only thing you did to get around other people was something like this once a year. And so I guess the idea of this slide is just to say that those of you who are maybe new Christians from being witnesses, maybe people who haven't found your place in a Christian church yet, I would heavily encourage you to get around other Christians, to be supported by them, to even support them. But what I keep talking about this idea of the answer to reaching them through the Christian church, how many people in this room have been blacklisted by the Jehovah's Witnesses? Yeah? Well, I have through the Mormons, actually, not the Jehovah's Witnesses. But so what that means is that now they won't knock on your door. That means that you can't directly reach those Jehovah's Witnesses that live around you. But it doesn't mean you can't. You'll come across them in the street, that type of thing. But they're not going to come across you. What then happens is you can build a ministry, so you can have a YouTube channel, you can have a website. We've done both of those things. And what you'll do then is you'll attract the people who are already doubting, who are already kind of maybe looking for a fight, or already on the way out. They'll come across you. But what I've been thinking about then is, what about the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, or the Jehovah's Witnesses who are not doubting, who are very faithful and very happy, who are not knocking on your door, who are not going to apostate websites? How then do we reach those? And what's happening is that in the Christian church, this is the obvious part, it's full of Christians. And all of these Christians, on a very regular basis, are getting knocks on the door from Jehovah's Witnesses. And sadly, you will know as well as I do that on a very regular basis, they are closing the door very quickly to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a fact. Some people do speak to them, but sadly, from your own guys' experience, you will know that as a witness, when you were knocking on many Christians' doors, you would have had, I'm already a Christian, thank you very much, see you later. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, who's the one knocking on the doors, reaching people? And so what we've really started focusing on very significantly as a ministry is approaching churches, is approaching Christian organisations, and actually saying, can we come and do a seminar for you? Can we do a teaching session for you to kind of demystify who the Mormons, who the Jehovah's Witnesses are, so that when these people, they're not necessarily going to make a big ministry out of it, but they're going to have heard this is what they believe and this is what I could say in response to that. When they get a knock on the door from that, the likelihood of them then responding is a lot higher. And what I've been thinking is, if you imagine every Christian in the country that gets a knock on the door of a Jehovah's Witness, spends 5 minutes on the door with them, sharing the testimony, maybe a Bible verse or two, then sends them on the way, how many more do we think are going to come to Christ? Do we think it's a lot more? But what we've found is quite often Christians see these guys as these scary people that are not worth speaking to. They've made up my mind, I've made up mine. It's a totally wrong perspective, but it's kind of that idea of, well, they're just unreachable. And if what this day has kind of underlined for me, and probably for the rest of you, is that Jehovah's Witnesses are far from unreachable. Is that Jehovah's Witnesses, when people witness to them, when they take the time to share the truth with them, God can use that, God can water that, and then they can come to faith in Christ. And so what our ministry is very much about now is, I'm in a Bible college in Scotland in a week and a half doing a session on Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses for a lot of students. We've been at an event called Apologetics in Manchester twice in the last month, covering Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. We've got other engagements. Tony's got one tonight at a church near where he lives, where he's sharing his testimony. And so what we kind of think is that if we can encourage as many Christians as possible just to realise that Jehovah's Witnesses are not too scary, you don't have to be an expert in everything to speak to them, I think the odds of us reaching a lot more is a lot more likely. And I guess, like I said, me getting up here now is not specifically to promote my ministry, but I would say if anyone here feels that they would want to be involved with that type of thing, if anyone here would want to support that, whether that's contacting churches in your area on our behalf, whether that's being available to do articles for us, whether that's actually being available to speak at churches in your area, we would be very interested to hear from you. And I think that's a very significant way. It's far from the only way. What we've heard today is a lot with regards to the internet ministries, with regards to the YouTube ministries. But I think there's a whole kind of load of these members of this group that are not coming to us that we can kind of make ourselves come to them, as it were. Does that make sense? Excellent. That's all I've got. Thank you.